Most people remember Marilyn Monroe as this fragile, tragic figure who got chewed up by Hollywood and never stood a chance. What most people don't know is that while she was pulling in tens of millions of dollars for 20th Century Fox, one of the biggest movie stars on the planet was being paid barely enough to cover rent. And when she finally found out exactly how little she was making compared to everyone standing next to her on set, she didn't just get upset. She picked a fight with an entire studio system built to keep her exactly where she was.
Marilyn Monroe signed her first studio contract with 20th Century Fox in the late 1940s, working her way up through small parts for a few $100s a week. By the early 1950s, she was the studio's biggest asset. In 1953's Niagara, she carried a full-blown thriller as the lead and proved she could open a picture on her name alone. That same year, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes turned her into a full-fledged musical star and became one of the top-grossing films of the year. Months later, How to Marry a Millionaire paired her with two other headliners and still made her the one audiences talked about walking out of the theater.
By 1953, she was the top box office draw in the country.
Marilyn was pulling in more fan mail than any other star on the Fox lot and landing on magazine covers nationwide. Studio executives openly credited her with saving pictures that would otherwise have flopped. Through all of it, her contract kept her locked in at somewhere between $500 and $1,500 a week, a rate the studio had set years earlier and had no intention of renegotiating just because she'd become a star.
But it was one number on one film that finally showed her exactly how little the studio thought she was worth.
On Gentlemen Prefer Blondes in 1953, Monroe's co-star Jane Russell was paid roughly $200,000 for the film. The movie was a smash, one of the top-grossing releases of the year, and critics singled out Monroe's performance as the reason it worked. Monroe, the reason audiences were buying tickets, was still working off her flat weekly rate. She asked Fox to renegotiate. The studio's chief, Darryl Zanuck, refused outright. When they handed her another forgettable musical she didn't want and wouldn't even show her the script, she stopped showing up. Fox suspended her, called her difficult, and told the press her career was over.
Most contract players in that spot waited the studio out and went back to work on the same terms. Marilyn Monroe left instead. In late 1954, The 7-Year Itch became a massive hit, and she walked away from Hollywood entirely. She moved to New York and announced she was starting her own company, Marilyn Monroe Productions, with a photographer and a lawyer as her partners. Fox sued her. The trade papers mocked her. For most of 1955, she didn't make a single film for the studio and let the success of The 7-Year Itch do the negotiating for her instead. It worked. Fox came back to the table.
In 1955, Monroe signed a new contract with Fox, $100,000 a film, approval over her directors and cinematographers, and the freedom to make movies outside the studio through her own company. She hadn't just gotten a raise, she had gotten a piece of the business itself.
Here's the difference that mattered, and it's the same one that matters for anyone building savings today. A weekly paycheck and a stake in what you actually build are not the same thing. A salary stops the moment you stop showing up. An ownership stake, a piece of business shares in a company, a share of the profits instead of just a wage, can keep paying you long after the work is done. Most of us will never renegotiate a Hollywood contract, but the same question applies to how you are building what you have. Are you only ever working for a paycheck? Or are you growing what you already have? Marilyn Monroe figured out the difference in 1955. It's worth figuring it out for yourself a lot sooner than she did. I'm Amy. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.